And good afternoon. It is the fourth day of January in 2024. I'm Alex Ansary. Welcome to another podcast. So I want to get back into covering the news. I'm easing back into it. And over time, there may be some improvements to my production quality, but that takes time to edit videos, to add in graphics. So right now, I'm just going to record my voice. But in a more perfect world, folks, I would be working with a team of, say, 10 people. And I've thought about a lot of ideas that I've had over the years regarding documentary films. I've mentioned some of those ideas with you. And it can be difficult to focus. It's not easy to make a film or to be frank, to make content on a regular basis in a zombie apocalypse. It feels like it's risky. That's another one of the reasons why I took a few years off. It feels risky right now to know too much about what's going on, but it feels like the right thing to do. It feels like, we need to be speaking about the things that need to be spoken of at this time, to wake up the people that can be awoken for our own good, for their own good, and the rest, well, they're going to do what the rest does, and that's follow mass consciousness. And a lot of us have a goal of evolving beyond this world, and that takes work. That takes action. That takes a certain amount of faith. But the powers that be, they are hell-bent on creating these various religious wars and conflicts, racial conflicts, class conflicts, clash of the nations. And we're obviously living in pretty incredible times. 2024 is a period in which I think a lot of things are going to go down. And the year after that, 2025. Doesn't mean the world's going to end. As I say, no man knows the hour or the day. So not predicting that, nor necessarily the return of Christ. But whatever's coming with China seems to be coming sooner than later. I have a book right here that I'm holding in my hand that I picked up from the library. It's called Surveillance State: Inside China's Quest to Launch a New Era of Social Control. It looks like the authors are a Chinese. Surveillance State tackles a critical global issue: how rapidly growing surveillance of all kinds is implicated in struggles for democracy against authoritarianism. This book reminds us how easily a state actor can quietly and stealthily take control of its people. As Uyghurs, we know this well, but to the rest of the world, surveillance state should serve as a wake-up call. So it talks about the detention of the Muslims in China. And someone could be thinking to themselves, who gives a fuck? Fuck the Muslims. What does it matter to me? I'm an American. It's like, if they can do it to other people, they can do it to you, especially when they're incrementally taking over your nation. So I'm going to bring up an article here. I'm going to have to type it in, so bear with me. China and the power grid. Okay, so we've seen a sharp escalation in attempts to hack into our grid, and it's actually worse than what they've told us. So we covered recently how the women in China are fed up with Xi demanding that they produce more children. And the question is, what do they want them to producing more children for? So we're heading towards something. Chinese hackers targeted Texas power grid. That's one thing that comes up. And Hawaii utility, which is interesting because China has targeted Hawaii in the past with lasers from space. We saw this in the last few years. And it was about 1 year ago now, that it was world news that the Chinese spy balloon flew over the U.S. And then other news came out that, in fact, it was taking place longer than what we're being told. Chinese hackers targeted Texas Power Grid, Hawaii water utility. A West Coast port also. And the source for this is Spectrum Local News. They have accessed the computer systems of about 24 critical entities over the past year, but have not caused any disruption. So somebody could see that and go, well, they haven't caused any disruption. We don't have anything to worry about. They're not fucking with us. They're just what? They're obviously running tests. We saw in the last year a major situation with the FAA where the computer systems went down. And they never told us why the computer systems went down. Back to predictive programming with movies. We see a lot of movies in which planes, including Leave the World Behind, planes are coming crashing down to the earth from the sky. I've had dreams of this event as well. Some of you may have as well. Have had dreams of planes coming down from the sky. So who knows what all that is about. Some people speculate that we're close to a pole shift. I told you in the past that I don't believe that we're in a grand solar minimum. In many places on the planet, it's warmer than normal. That doesn't mean that I subscribe to the global warming theory. It means that we have an influx of particles from the sun, which is affecting weather patterns in various places on the planet. And it's not, in fact, an ice age. So, yeah. People should be informed about the real effects of the sun. And there's a lot of work that I still have to do on my end to perfect the message, to get it out there to the most people. And it's important to have interest beyond conspiracy theorists or theories. It's important to have an interest in spirituality. It's important to have an interest in nature, not necessarily nature worship, but nature. It's important to have an interest in exercise. It's important to have a positive daily routine. Yeah, responding to one of the recent comments about getting back into meditation, I took a few years off of meditation. I don't meditate deeply on a regular basis, but I'm trying to get back into it. And I have my periods in which I'm doing better at that, and then periods in which I'm falling behind. But I haven't yet, in the sense of Rocky, going the distance, gone full hardcore and gone months and months on, say, a retreat into a deep state of silence. But I don't knock those things. I think that that's an important thing to do for people that have the means to do that, to fully unplug for weeks to months on end in a nature retreat of some sort. You can also do the urban version where you unplug from the internet. Okay, and you go to the park and you go to the library and you pull back from certain addictions. And then you work on your meditation incrementally, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here, building upon the philosophy of the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So building upon a small foundation, building upon that. Taking baby steps, if you will. Taking moments to get into a meditative state of mind within seconds. And just holding it for a few seconds. And grounding to the earth. And doing that consciously when you're at the supermarket. When you're out in traffic. Grounding yourself. Visualizing a protective field around both yourself and your car. Okay? Putting out positive affirmations that you will be safe from the predators of the road. Of course, we're not just talking cops. Not that all cops are predators, but sometimes they can be. Affirmations are important. Visualizations also, right? So these are things to keep in mind. Because the mainstream conspiracy reality doesn't have any of that stuff within it. That grounds out the negativity. And so there's a lot of people that are really confused right now. Even people with advanced degrees, people with master's degrees. It's actually widely believed now that the more advanced the college degree, the more mind controlled the individual, the more likely they are to be subservient to the system. Okay, so let's cover some other things. Iran is on fire, screaming death to America and Israel. Okay. There was a recent attack in Iran, and they are saying that there's a number of people that are dead. Okay, you can look up the news for yourself. So I'm not doing a full-on news show, but I feel like we need to talk about this in light of the fact that we just discussed the number one movie in America for at least a few weeks was Leave the World Behind, with Obama involved in the production, right? I never believed the BS that he was a Muslim. I always believed that that was disinformation, and he would play a role in expanding the wars on Islamic countries, and that's exactly what he's done. So what is Obama doing? What is his involvement in reality? What is going on here with this predictive programming, with the messaging? And not only that movie and others, and Clyde Lewis put out a tweet. I'm spending a little bit more time on Twitter, but I really don't like Elon Musk, and I really don't like the content on Twitter. But you can get a lot more information quicker on Twitter. If you're quick mentally, you can also get sucked into the vortex of negativity and really be affected by the energy of other people. And I would even say the consciousness of the people that are on those websites, which is actually a reason why I got off Facebook for multiple years and why I have some friends that are sensitives that don't use platforms like Facebook because of how they feel that it affects their consciousness. And so when you're super sensitive, you're picking up on a number of things, not only the events that are going on in the world, but the emotions and the mental states of the actual people. Not everybody is as sensitive, and that is intoxicating. Okay, so bringing it back. We have this alignment between what's on Netflix, Iran being portrayed as the threat, with flyers being found on cars saying death to America, written in Arabic, right? And you combine that, of course, with Simpsons episodes that have, for example, in the survival preparedness episode of The Simpsons, which I saw like 6 months ago on Hulu, I think, or a year ago. He's got a box of porn, pretty interesting there, and a box of Qurans. Why is that? And why did Google for a while, when you type in who is the world's greatest man, say that it's Muhammad? I'm not here to say that he is or he is not. I'm not here to attack any religion. But I am here to say that if Google is involved in a lot of nefarious things, including partnerships with the U.S. military, which has been involved in occupying multiple Islamic countries, I'm going to be suspicious of things like that, of Google ranking things like that, because it leads people down a certain rabbit hole, conspiratorial, that I don't necessarily subscribe to, that a lot of people on the far right subscribe to where they believe absolutely guaranteed that it is a Islamic invasion that is being orchestrated from Soros from the top down. And I do acknowledge that they are acting in a way through immigration, irresponsible immigration, and many other things. Certain Islamic figures that have been brought into power in certain places in Europe, such as Scotland, others, right? They see these things and they go, holy shit, this is a takeover of our society. There are other things that are also, I believe, manufactured, put out there on purpose to cause a reaction. So whether it be civil war or other forms of unrest, it is certainly part of the planning from the controllers to make things seem as if other people are getting ahead more in this world than Americans and certain Americans. And to a certain degree, that is the truth because of the way that we are being played against each other. But in the end, no one wins. In the end, no human racial group is said to be at the top of the other humans. It is that which is already controlling us. So they are doing very, very manipulative things with social media and media regarding race relations, equality, war, injustice, and so many other things. I just want to say here and now, because of the society that we're in, I don't know a great deal about the spiritual side of Islam. I know more at the moment than I did a few years ago, because I live in the post 9/11 world in which the entire religion is demonized. And we saw in 2014 and 2015 and 2016 very specific allegations towards just about every single Muslim that there is, that they all are a part of certain conspiratorial agendas to do X, Y, Z, that they all believe in a certain type of violence towards non-believers. And this has been put out there as cui bono fact. And while there are extremists out there, there's many, many Muslims in this country that don't subscribe to those beliefs, that have different interpretations of the Quran. Even the very word jihad has a different interpretation than the radical interpretation. But you never hear that. You never hear that in the alternative media. You never hear about famous poets and Sufis and intellectuals from the East, either in our culture or in our media, nor on Netflix. So Netflix isn't really woke in a good sense, right? Some people view the word woke in a positive sense and a negative sense. It's how you interpret it, really. There's nothing wrong with being awake. And the whole term woke, I suspect, kind of was born out of the term to awaken or to be awake, i.e. woke. But like with the quote-unquote patriot movement and conspiracy movement, the woke movement has been hijacked for nefarious purposes. But there's nothing wrong with being awake to injustice. The idea is that we should be concerned about injustice or hatred or other things, regardless of who it's happening to, and get outside of our tribalism and continue to work on our love and compassion for others. Because the evil of this world wants to take that away from us, our compassion for others. And I really picked up on that and noticed it within myself, in my own psyche, during the coronavirus days. A real strong resentment towards society, and a real strong sense of, a strong sense of resentment that leads to mentalities like, well, if this is it, society had it coming. Society became hateful. Society became unconscious. So if this is it, fuck it. Let it burn. And now that it's been a few years and the smoke has cleared, while I do agree to a certain level with that idea, there's a certain callousness within it. We have to prevent the evil within ourselves from becoming callous and non-compassionate and loving towards the people of the world, despite all the unconscious humans that came before us that helped create the modern world of control, right? This isn't the result of just humans. Keep that in mind. The demons that we're dealing with, they're not all powerful, but to a certain degree, they are powerful. And they do have certain abilities that humans don't, as humans have certain abilities and gifts that they don't. So let's not be confused about what's taking place here. But that's what they want. They want to create an angry society and in the modern day and age that uses the internet to troll and harass and slander and defame and to create fake news. And there's all different types and variants of fake news that are out there now. And there isn't really like a great grasp that the human population has on the deception that is unfolding. It's quite sad. So this year of 2024 is obviously a year in which we're getting closer to the peak of the solar cycle. So I expect that we're going to see an increase in a variety of things. That includes like local unrest, and that's not always coming in the form of protests. Well, we've seen an increase recently. I noticed since the headline came out about the largest solar flare since 2017, it did not spark a major geomagnetic storm, but it still did have an effect, in my opinion. In my opinion, we're affected by the solar flares even when there isn't a significant geomagnetic storm. This is my opinion. This is my opinion that I'm sharing with you. This is not scientific fact. This is my opinion. It is my opinion that we are energetically affected by the solar flares in ways that may even be difficult to measure with modern scientific instruments. Okay, so according to science, by the way, just so you know, the aura, to the best of my knowledge, officially doesn't exist, right? But there are ways in which people have used certain tools, including dowsing rods, to prove the existence of an aura. There is the author by the name of Burl Payne, who died a few years ago, who I spoke to years ago, although he had a stroke. So his ability to speak was greatly hindered. But his articles and the links between the sun and the cycles of war, citing earlier researchers like Alexander Chizhevsky, are amazing and are things that I read earlier in the day, in the 2000s, and helped connect a lot of dots for me. So he had talked about a biofield detector, some sort of a device that he built using a variety of simple tools that you can get from the hardware store. And he details this in one of his ebooks. It might be The Power of Non-Thought or The Power of Spin Force. You might even be able to find a free PDF out there on the internet. I believe that I have a PDF on my hard drive, possibly. And this is something that is basically like a pyramid-shaped device that is something that is dangled by a thread, if you will. Yeah, it would take me some time to get images for you for this podcast, so I apologize. But the point is, even though science hasn't acknowledged the existence of the aura still does exist. And it doesn't protect us from certain forces. And when our aura is weak through certain immoral actions, and we talk about those, and other spiritual leaders that you may listen to and follow talk about those, but they may not talk about the aura or the field around the human body. But that is connected. Our morality, what we do, what we say, what we listen to, what we watch, it affects our consciousness. And our consciousness, whether we're dealing with moral thoughts or negative thoughts, it's going to affect the field around our body. So yeah, this was also another motivating factor in me working to give up coffee. When I came back to the internet, I was drinking a lot of coffee, sometimes 3 cups a day. I actually had 3 cups of Starbucks. I'll admit it. I know, Starbucks. But 3 cups of Starbucks on the video that I did on the homelessness epidemic in Portland and the spiritual warfare taking place there, a subject that I'm going to come back to. The downside is the jitters and other psychological responses to caffeine, which are not necessarily positive, which can interrupt sleep. So I can see many ways in which our society is mind controlled to be overly addicted on alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, and sugar. Not the first time I've said that, but in these modern day, the modern day Rome, if you will, as Philip K. Dick would refer to this reality, right? A reincarnated Rome. We see that these things are basically the gods of people of the modern day and age. It's where a lot of people get their natural spirituality and confidence and charisma through alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, sugar, and perhaps some other things. So, yeah, you've heard me talk about AA and NA, how I experienced that back in the day when I had my experimentation with certain substances in the late 90s. And, I noticed then how many people were addicted to their nicotine and their sugar and their coffee. But what struck me the most was the nicotine addiction. How a lot of people were in these rooms and they were supposedly dealing with recovery. And here they are addicted to nicotine and coffee without actually facing their not only emotions, but energy levels. It's not just about emotions, but energy levels as they are, and bringing them up to where they need to be without being so addicted on these substances. So what I think is to maximize one's spirituality, one has to go without certain luxuries or to take a break from certain luxuries. So we talk about coffee, sugar, TV. One might want to take a break from their own hometown and the luxuries contained within that matrix. You know, where they're around the same people, the same girlfriends or girlfriend, family members. A lot of modern day humans don't have a natural rite of passage. They just don't. And yeah, I want to write more about this in the future, how children should be raised, even though I'm not a father. But as far as I'm concerned, as soon as you are born in this world and you're able to talk and you're able to walk and you're able to function, you should be taught how to build something, how to learn something. And the problem with a lot of modern day parents that are just engaged in the spiritual act of procreation and doing very little more is they're not preparing their kids for the world as it is. And a lot of parents are still children in reality. As souls, as spirits, they're still children. They haven't advanced yet, even if they're older. And that's the illusion about this world. People think that when you're older, you reach a certain amount of advancement. And in some cases, people get worse. On that note, I've said multiple times that I feel like it's by design that we have an artificially short lifetime on this planet. It's like we don't really get enough time to get anything really done, politically and otherwise. We end up being manipulated by these other forces, in my opinion, in my suspicion, demonic forces, that have lifetimes that super exceed the human lifetime. But I want to add that if certain humans were allowed to live, keep this in mind, forever or for a very long time, certain humans that are in power, and there's lots of ways someone can be in power. It's not just political power. Okay, people can end up in power on the internet. The internet has facilitated many ways of having your own cult. And in times of doom and gloom and uncertainty, there are people out there that are looking for answers. And, you know, whether people intend to go out and deceive and manipulate people, or it just happens unconsciously, regardless, there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of cults throughout history. There's a lot of cults that we've seen in our nation even before the internet, and we can see certain tactics that were used by Jim Jones, certain demographics in America and locations on the planet. I'm also thinking about Osho, which is also featured in the Netflix special How to Be a Cult Leader. And he was a man of Indian heritage who led a lot of people out to rural Oregon. He recruited, I think, even homeless from Portland, Oregon at the time. And so that was more my mother's generation. So we've seen a lot of New Age cults and other cults in the last few decades, but the internet has facilitated the rise of the online cults where you don't have to be there physically, and you can be manipulated by the false teachings of someone that is in fact channeling demons. And what comes to mind right now is Jay-Z Knight, also known as Ramtha, in Yelm, Washington. And she's very influential. She influenced several people that I knew back in 2010 and 2011. Several men that took advantage of me when I helped them start a store, the Portland Preparedness Center. So here's the moral of the story here. There's a lot of people that are involved in their own business and cult, and they don't really want to help other people. And we see them often in preparedness circles, in militias, in the New Age movement, and religions. It seems to be the natural state of consciousness for a lot of human beings to try to take advantage of others. And, you know, it is the actual base nature of humankind. And I want to say humankind over mankind. So I'm not going to be blaming men for this. It's the actual nature of humankind to allow women to a certain degree to be oppressed by the various institutions of this world. Women are responsible too. And not just women in this culture, but women around the world are responsible. okay, for allowing things to be as they are. And I've also seen other speculations as well that we're enslaved on this planet, the genders, the races, the nations, etc., and the many ways in which we are enslaved and bound by our senses because of possibly our placement in the universe or Earth itself. That Earth, this quarantine prison planet, Earth itself is in a position of imprisonment. It's almost as if it's offline or off kilter, not in the position or place in which it needs to be. So we have the reality of the slave mind in today's man and woman in the various races. And this is why we have a certain amount of the population procreating. And oftentimes it's not the most conscious human beings. Meanwhile, the people that you think should have children are not having children. Meanwhile, we got to contend with the new age disinformation and propaganda about crystal children and indigo children. And if that was the case, if the whole world was waking up with enlightened children, we would see very different behavior from the children today. Okay, and we're not necessarily seeing that. We're seeing still a lot of children born with major problems. Okay. Oftentimes you read about stories in which guns are taken to school by small children who, in some cases, pull out the gun and shoot their teacher. We see stories about sexual assault in elementary school and middle school. We see the epidemic of bullying right now, which now encompasses the internet. So you have the modern kids on Snapshot, which are all networked together. Many of them will network together online. And so bullying campaigns take place online, involving many kids, involving smartphones. And children are bombarded, many women are, with text messages, and insulting statements and things of that nature. There's a lot of stories out that you can read about as suicides are exploding amongst teenage girls and teenagers in general. It's not just the bullying. Okay? It's the fact that they don't have a world to look forward to. That's why there's suicide taking place. And as we talked about the dark side of the sex industry, although some will argue that it has its place, right? Because procreation is part of life. We have these feelings for a reason. But the dark side, there's a lot of different things that can be said with regards to that, right? But it's missing love. The sex industry is missing love. And society is missing love. And so it's like the younger generation is being conditioned to accept things that would horrify earlier generations through the things that are happening and being featured on various websites. So modern day bullying can take various forms, including someone being sent videos. And see, this is the other reason why somebody cannot just drive drunk, and I'm using that word as a metaphor, on Twitter, which is just to be on Twitter all day long, being affected by the algorithm, is that you could be easily affected by constantly witnessing violence and destruction and people being beat up. And people can end up radicalized on various ends of the spectrum, be they white, Middle Eastern, Israeli, Jewish, Black. There doesn't even necessarily have to be any intentional algorithmic manipulation going on for someone to still naturally see content that's going to radicalize them. Okay? Because people are in a crazy space and it leads to that. Unfortunately, we don't have enough scholars in this world that are discussing these things. I'm also seeing numbers. I'm going to look this up right now. What does this mean? Of course, you can look up certain numbers online and you're going to get different interpretations. But yes, I've seen a lot of that. 888, 144, 144, or 411. Talked about this a few months ago. It's not the first time I've talked about this. 1224, 66. That is not necessarily 66 is not 666. Seeing that is not always about the devil. It is about a need to restore balance. 1111. A lot of people see that. There's 333. There's 222. So some people might see certain numbers more than others. 444. I've seen a lot of that. So let's go back to some of the things that are happening in the world. So yeah, we covered China's penetration into our grid and planting malware apparently in various places. They may even be able to manipulate the temperature. Turn the heat up during the summer, turn the temperature down during the winter. I believe that I've read a few blogs about this being discussed. And so this is quite serious. We've read articles about Russia hacking into the various jurisdictions in the U.S., shutting down the 9/11 system. Okay, and a lot of people are just going to shrug that off. A lot of people are just going, Russia, 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 mocking any concern about Russia, any concern, playing every article down, playing it down. Every article that we see regarding Putin threatening America, playing it down, playing it down. Oh, Russia's the victim. Russia's the victims. And they want to stay in that mindset. And they're hypocritical. It's hypocritical to have a favorite political candidate running for the presidency in the U.S., but then to blame the U.S. wholesale for all the world's problems. And to look at Russia as some sort of a hero state. Just because Russia is not the same thing as the Soviet Union doesn't mean that their nation has been cleansed of the sins of their past. You don't just change your do you just go change your name down at the DMV or with the court system and walk away from all your sins and all your past actions and all your karma? Is that how it works? Do you just change your name? So how does it work that way in Russia? Right? So there's a lot of darkness worldwide, and a lot of people are just blind to it. So yes, we are going back and forth here between commentary on the world, commentary on society, and commentary on spirituality. I want to return to that for a moment. So with regards to meditation, one of the things that people struggle with is being able to focus, because people come under a certain form of psychic attack from evil forces. And so, yeah, it seems that a lot of humans are just born with these entity issues. It's a part of our incarnation and our existence in this realm. Okay, so they're going to try to keep someone away from prayer, away from meditation, away from deep thought, away from deep contemplation. On the Sufis channel, there's an interesting who meditation. Well, there's the mantra, the repeating of who, H-U, who. So yeah, YouTube is an amazing place. We can find a wide array of meditation music. I can throw out some recommendations here and there. I watched Firestarter, the movie, also recently, which stars the little girl that was in E.T. And the soundtrack to that movie is produced by Tangerine Dream. I like a lot of Tangerine Dream. And it really helps one get into a meditative state of mind. We talked about Qigong and circular motion techniques and building up the Qi or the energy within your own hands. And there are entire books that deal with energy healing. Once you've got that energy going on in your hands. And I just feel like I have this knowledge within me internally, perhaps genetically within me from ancestral past and maybe soul history. But I don't sit and just read all these books. I haven't read every single page from the books that I have bought over the years. In many cases, I've seen books as things that are going to be much more valuable in the future, perhaps when there is no grid. And there is a sentimental value to owning books as well. But I've had many, many books in my life that I have either given up or I've left behind. Books other than the books that I own now. But I continue going to the library and looking at, I feel myself using the library as a place where I can exercise my intuition, along with talking about world events and then watching them happen. Right? But the other thing is sensing that there's a book for me around certain aisles in the library. And that's why I found the book Surveillance State today. And it's quite the cover. It's got a big giant eye with what looks like an urban city in the center of it, looking a little bit like Stonehenge, to be frank. The big skyscraper blocks looking like the Stonehenge blocks. And then we have people defending China just because China is doing some good things in the world, even though we see what it's doing to its own people. So yeah, I see China being reported on in Iraq. They're building new cities in Iraq. So they have been positioned on purpose to look like the hero. And I've said this for a long time, the U.S. is being set up to look like the bad guy. Not that they're innocent, but it wouldn't be something that gets rid of the new world order. If the U.S. plays the bad guy, they destroy the U.S. and they destroy the lives of Americans or people living in America, it wouldn't be the end of the new world order. People want to act like the whole world revolves around the U.S. I've heard people say that when the U.S. falls, the world falls. These are certain mantras and statements that people say that don't necessarily have any basis in fact, just to let you know. They can totally go on without the U.S. They have brought other markets up, demographics up, to a level where they can also buy various retail goods around the world. So they don't have to necessarily rely solely on America, I don't think. Things can change. So people should be prepared for those changes. And if people just prepare physically with their goods and they don't prepare spiritually, what's to keep them from killing themselves? 8-digit PDX on YouTube. Someone I hung out with in Portland in 2014, right? He had some major mental problems that I didn't know about, but he helped me build a teardrop camper that I lived in while I was homeless in Portland. Kept me on the streets, kept me out of the back of the canopy of the 85 Toyota truck I was driving around in at the time. But he had some major problems. He got really into the Bundy thing also and tried to get me involved in that. And, certain people, they like to control me. Certain guys, they like to act like I'm going to be their bitch or someone going to push around because either they're bigger than me or older than me or some other shit. And I explained to this guy, dude, that's not going to fly. I know you really want someone to be under you and you want to be alpha. Point is he had a lot of really good survival knowledge. We can even call it survival gnosis. You can take a look at his channel. He's got all types of videos. 8, the word digit, and then PDX. Anyway, he made enemies over the years. Don't know how many, right? As if, you're going to meet someone and they're going to tell you if they really screwed over somebody in their life, right? Likely not. So he talked about these enemies often, and there are people that talk about his enemies possibly taking him out on the internet, because what happened was he allegedly killed himself. And see, I don't know what the official story is or what the real story is, what really happened. but he did have psychosis with regards to certain things. Okay, so at one point, he ended up robbed, as far as like he had all these tools that he put in the back of his work van. And he assumed it was me because I smoke pot, and he want to play up that mentality that if you're a pot smoker, you're a criminal, and perhaps other biases as well, which was alarming to me because I consider this person to be a friend, right? But years later, after the smoke cleared and he's dead, his father and others that knew him are actively speculating that somebody took him out, that he did not kill himself in 2017 or 2018, whatever the year it was, that he was taken out. But they don't give names, and they don't talk about what group and why, i.e. motive. So, if somebody doesn't protect themselves spiritually, you can have all the preps in the world, but have the bad company, be reading crap on the internet, be chasing down a lot of, fake news stories, spending hours and hours on the internet, looking at various threats, looking at who's going to be the Antichrist, as if it's going to be one person. I know in certain religions there's one person. I'm not saying that's not going to happen. What I'm saying is we have people that are on the internet looking at if Obama's the Antichrist, instead of looking at the fact that we have an Antichrist system that's brainwashing people all around us. And another thing, just because the Epstein list that was released doesn't have Trump's name on it, doesn't mean that Trump didn't already go anyways. How difficult would it be for them to take Trump or anyone else's name off of that list? And look at all the pictures that we have, that we can see with Donald Trump and Epstein. Why would people fall into some sort of a mentality of protecting this man when he helped drive us into the level of debt that he drove us into? $34 trillion. Okay, we see his ties to Hillary Clinton, the photographs between them, and he can even go on the WE, World Wrestling, and act like he's fighting Vince McMahon. And the WE is all about false fights. It's all about orchestrated fights. He could sit there and put his hands on the globe with the Saudis, a corrupt Islamic government that murders its own people, that harms innocent or decent Muslims, right? And we can have Elon Musk going to China and enjoying a 16-course buffet. And the people that support Elon Musk, they're not going to think anything suspicious about it. They're just going to appreciate the fact that they have this social media welfare going on. That's right. They have somebody that built a website for them so they can feel like they're super big and important through their likes and their tweets, without realizing that platforms like Twitter and others make certain words trend on purpose to create popularity and trend and followers around certain hashtags. So if they want to create a movement of white supremacists, they can do that on Twitter using certain words and hashtags. If they want to create a certain movement of people that are anti-white or against white people, they can use certain words or hashtags to do that as well. And the people aren't thinking that the people aren't thinking that this is being orchestrated, and that the orchestration was taking place on Twitter before and it's taking place now. They're thinking that it's all organic, that the people are dictating through their individual tweets what's going to trend and what's not. And to a certain degree, there's an influence. They are influencing what trends to a degree, but they're not the master engineers. They're just co-creators of it. They're just participants, right? It's really on the back end that they can make sure that certain things will trend over and over and over again. They want to make the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers trend over and over and over again in 2019 and 2020 to build support for those groups. Do you understand what I'm saying? To build support for those groups. And they can later, if they choose to, There's a lot of people concerned about that. And they can later take them down. We see a number of people connected to Alex Jones that allegedly are going to be spending a lot of time in prison, which I am surprised by some of that. Joe Biggs is somebody who I am not a fan of. Oh, he was all about pushing the Islamic invasion meme hardcore when he worked for Alex Jones. And in my War on Islam Explodes episode from 2014, which I privated, which I'll bring back later, be patient, I highlighted Joe Biggs dressing up like a radical jihadi and crossing the Rio Grande River, I believe, which separates Mexico from Texas, or at least parts of it. Never been down there, that far south. If you're down at the border, let me know and how things are in your neck of the woods. What's going on there? I've heard from a few people down south in the last few years. But that was hardcore propaganda. When you have somebody dressing up like a Muslim, like a radical Muslim, a terrorist really, all in black like a ninja, basically showing how easy it is. And so they create a massive fear over that and a psychosis. Really, they helped InfoWars and others have in reality created a mental health crisis in America. And this mental health crisis of thinking that if someone looks Muslim or foreign, that they're a terrorist, there's no medication that gets rid of that. There's no specific therapy or treatment that this government is pushing to help people that they and their media made sick. They're not trying to clean up the mess that they started. They're going to try to make it worse. So they sit there after years and years of messing with the American people's minds, and Obama helps bring about this movie, Leave the World Behind, in which Arabic letters say death to America, courtesy of Iran. And here is Iran on cue saying death to America after a major attack takes place in Iran, which they recently said in a declaration today that this came from the US and Israel. So I've said for years that there may be an event coming in the future in which the whole world turns against the US after maybe 1 million people are killed, or some other event. Right now, we're reading about millions of people being displaced in Gaza as a result of what the US and Israel is doing. And I understand the concerns about Hamas. I think that it's ridiculous that there are people on the left that are getting behind Hamas simply because of what Israel is doing. I think that as a result of Hamas, a lot of innocent Palestinians are dying. And there's also information saying that the official story about the rapes and the kidnappings are not entirely accurate. And so there, I'm not going to take the time to look at every individual story, but I know that our world is insane. Going back to the mental health crisis, it is insane for a reason. It's not necessarily because just the solar flares or the moon cycles or the eclipses. It's the hardcore high-tech propaganda that is beamed into all of these people's minds. And it's just getting worse. No chip needed. Although a chip would make it much, much worse. We all know that. That would create an instantaneous Android zombie apocalypse reality, right? Android zombie apocalypse, as opposed to just a zombie apocalypse, but an Android zombie apocalypse that's being manipulated by cell phone towers and command centers. And that's going to be a freaky reality, like some out of Equilibrium, the movie. Going back to Joe Biggs. So I always assume these people are government agents. That includes Pete Santilli, who spent some time in jail over his involvement in the Oregon Wildlife Malheur refuge takeover. But he did not spend a lot of time behind bars. Whereas Joe Biggs was sentenced to maybe 15 years. A couple other names that have slipped my mind. Ethan Nordic, something to that effect. He also got many, many years. So were these people thinking then that they were going to get away with January 6th? Were they led to believe by Alex Jones himself or others that everything would be okay and that Trump would clean up the mess and clean up the pieces? So people need to think about that. There are certain people out there that are involved in massive deceptions, right? But they're not ringleaders. They are under mind control themselves. They are having a mental health crisis themselves. They may seem to be intelligent. They may seem to be in a position of leadership. They may seem to have the gift of gab. They may seem to have a number of skills. I believe with Joe Biggs, he had a number of skills, maybe fighting skills, war skills. He was in the military, comic book art, I think, and reporting skills, and who knows what else. But never liked the guy. But he has multiple skills. So the problem is we have many, many gifted people in our world. They have the gift of fighting, intelligence, beauty, brawn, intelligence, right? But they continue to serve the shaitan, satanic, evil system, and instead of use their gifts given to them by God for the highest good. And that's what we can really see in our modern day and age. A lot of gifted, beautiful, intelligent, smart people. But yet so easily brainwashed and co-opted. So someone left a comment that 2024 was the year that they were going to go after the Patriots, according to some of the chatter going on BitChute. And my response to that is, there is a lot of chatter about civil war, yes, for 2024. And but I will say that this is secular. We go through this cyclical period in which we see a lot of talk about civil war. However, 2024 is going to be significant, and the year after that, and the years after that. Okay, so we are entering into, now that we're in 2024, and I've talked about this year for a long time, a period of great change and strife. There's also a story about an imam, which is the name of a spiritual leader in the religion of Islam, being shot, I believe, in New Jersey, is it? They haven't found the suspect, so no one knows whether it's a hate crime or not. Right? The information is just not there. But the timing of it is happening right as these events are happening in Gaza and Israel. Right? Several months ago, a Palestinian boy of age 6 was killed by a landlord who may have been listening to YouTuber Jonathan Cain. That is according to one source who I came across online. And he made the connection between Jonathan Cain and Tom Horn of Skywatch News, which is disappointing. So this whole thing regarding the conspiracy movement and the truth movement, I suspect, right, without knowing for a fact, but I suspect there's a lot of people that are split off into multiple camps. Some being behind the support of Palestine, as they have been for years, and critical of Israel, and some blaming the Jews for all the world's problems. Then there's going to be another camp, people that may have certain conspiratorial ideas, but they're going to stand behind Israel, and they're going to see the Palestinians, and certainly Hamas, as being in the wrong. And many of them, I can see evidence of it online, are not really transparent and honest about the atrocities committed by Israel. So there's definitely what we have right here with Israel and Gaza, and the way the algorithms are operating, a situation in which they certainly have a lot of people on both sides. A lot of people in support of the Palestinian cause and plight, including a South African lawsuit that is charging Israel with genocide. And then we have people on the other extreme raising alarm bells about migrants at the border including Hamas, even national citizens from China. There's a lot of concern about the migrants and who's coming over. And of course, that creates more fear. That creates more fear within a society or a culture such as this, the United States in North America, which has an increasing population of people that look different, for better or for worse, whether you like that or not. But it's not going to make the situation that we're in with an increased population, with a number of people from different cultures who look different from each other. It doesn't make our days better. It doesn't make our days happier to be in the modern day and age where everything is designed to keep us at war with each other, or in a constant state of either real or perceived competition over scarce resources. Resources, of course, the availability of which, as well as the value of the dollar and the standard of living, all of which can be controlled. And the controllers, the people controlling the value of our currency, whether or not we go to war or not, and the level of immigration, they are not Muslims. They are not immigrants. They are not foreigners. Right. So people need to wake up. And they're not going to be waking up from mainstream conspiracy so-called truthers. So I imagine that there's a lot of division right now amongst the Hamas, Israel, Palestine, Gaza situation. Yeah, you have basically only seen and heard the dark side of Islam, basically, in the truth movement. So have I. Same goes for this culture. And as a result of only being an American, only being from this culture, even though I'm ethnically different, I've never sat down and done a full study of the deeper faiths around the world and the beliefs. And when you actually sit down and you read the spiritual text or certain books, right, you see often the similarity in the spiritual beliefs. There are many parallels, for example, between Islam and Christianity. There are some differences, but there's a lot of parallels. And so a lot of people don't know that. There's a lot of misinterpretations about certain people from certain countries and certain religions, and a lot of people don't know. And they fall into these unconscious states of consciousness where they believe the fake news coming across the web saying that Burger King is going to get rid of pork to appease the Muslims, without realizing that was 111% fake. Didn't happen. Many other articles existed like this in recent years. And people don't stop to think, wait a minute. Why are we seeing this? Why are we being bombarded with this type of propaganda? Going back to this book that I'm holding in my hand, Surveillance State, Inside China's Quest to Launch a New Era of Social Control. That which can easily surveil you. I said this years ago. I'm saying it again. This is one of my quotes. That which can easily surveil you can easily control you or manipulate your energy. This is, of course, why many people might want to keep their webcam closed or turned off, right? There's a reason, of course, the Native Americans and perhaps other indigenous groups didn't want to be photographed. And here we are, many of us, we've been duped into this social media dystopian, panopticon dystopia nightmare of uploading all of our thoughts instead of keeping some of our thoughts to ourselves. But for me, folks, I'm already in too deep. I might as well keep going. But for some of you and others, right, there is value in staying offline, keeping your face offline, keeping your name offline, keeping photographs of your children offline, keeping the names of your pets offline, and things of that nature. Because there's a reason why they have made it free. Free. But in this world, folks, nothing is really free. So in the future, I'll be coming back and talking more about the spiritual side of various faiths. I understand people have certain faiths that listen to this program. They have strong beliefs. I get that. But I'm not going to fall into that box. I'm going to be outside the box. There's a book here, The Universal Spirit of Islam. There are aspects of this that seem very, very spiritual, and it talks about Judaism, other spiritual faiths as well. And so in this period in time in which we are being ripped apart socially, I think that it's very important for us to learn our own history of this nation, history of the land of our ancestors, the various world faiths and religions. And so it's not the idea to blend everything together into one unified culture, but to enjoy the best of various cultures. And we have, and religions, and individuals, and talk shows, and kinds of food, kinds of clothing, kinds of music. We're really, really gifted in the modern day and age with so many different aspects of quality culture. And I think that the dark side wants us, in order to keep us into a dark space, controlled and afraid of positive change. All of the positive change that we could possibly experience in our lives, meeting new people and people that are also on the conscious path, they are trying to sabotage that every step of the way and keep us into this social media hellhole where they control the notifications, they control the likes, they control in some cases whether you even get an email or not. And I'll tell you what, it's really, really creepy when you start realizing that your email is being tampered with and that emails are disappearing. And I have been through that as well. I've said enough. Hope you enjoyed today's discourse. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the people that have contributed over the past few months, and I'll be back with more.